Welcome back to What Would You Ask podcast. My next guest, one of those epic episodes. You know, there's some out there that are just epic, right? Ava the elephant in the early season, right? With Tiffany and Omar with college hunks and Kevin called them pigs. That's really early, right? But we're going to move it up a little bit. Season 4, the season 4 opener, I think is episode 1, actually. Look at my notes. It was episode 1. CoatChex. Remember CoatChex? I thought it was a great idea when I saw it. I've seen it 8 times now in the last 24 hours. But when I saw it the first time, I was like, wow, man, that's really cool. What a great idea. Because have you ever, for those of us who grew up in the tri-state area, right, and going out in Midtown, you lose that ticket. You think, oh, well, what that black leather jacket, that's mine. No, sorry. You either wait around to the rest of the night or you figure something else out. Go home without it because that's it. That's that little ticket is your life. You don't want to lose that. Lose the lady's number that you got that night before you lose a ticket. I mean, seriously. But CoatChex, innovative, computerized CoatChex system, right? And CoatChex, as Derek mentioned in the episode, is now the app, and Chexology is the company. So, as they say, well versed 7, 8 years ago, from product to company. Want to make sure we check that box, right? Especially if you're a Shark Tank entrepreneur. It is my pleasure to welcome Derek Pacque to What Would You Ask podcast. How you doing?
Great, Nick. Thanks for having me.
So, as I usually do, I hatchet job the product or service that people bring into the tank. But tell us a little bit about what you brought in. I thought it was really innovative, number one. And I wasn't kidding. I mean, seriously, you threw the tickets up in the air and it was like, yeah, man, I don't want to lose that little, 1.5-inch ticket. What inspired you to start? You gave us the story a little bit, but remind us what the story was about CoatChex.
Yeah. So in college at Indiana University, I started a coat checking business. None of the bars or nightclubs provided it. People, sort of like you said, they go out, they either had 2 choices. You wear a coat, you stash it somewhere in the nightclub, hope someone doesn't steal it, or you don't wear a coat, freeze in line, and then try to grab someone's coat on the way out so you don't freeze on the way home, right? So that was the case in Bloomington. And it was crazy to me. I was one of the ones who brought the coat. Someone took it. And I just, coming from, was in the DC area before, I started going out in the bars in Indiana. They had coat checking. And I was like, why don't they provide this? So went into the bar, asked the bar owners, why don't you provide it? And they kind of looked at me like, huh? Like, Indiana, coat check? No. And I said, I'll do it for you. I'll do everything. I'll give you a revenue split. And they were like, yeah, can you start Wednesday? So I opened up a coat check business. It was called the Hoosier Coat Check. And in that journey, in that process of running that business, I realized there was a bigger problem here than places that should provide coat check that don't. The bigger problem was the way people provide coat checking is antiquated. It's a nightmare. They use the paper, like you said. It becomes your lifeline. If you lose that paper, that coat is no longer yours.
Yep.
And as the operator, right, I want to give you your coat back. The problem is, end of the night, there's a long line. You bottleneck everyone if you lose your ticket because, like you said, it's the black leather jacket. You look behind you, they're all black. Yeah, and then you either wait at the side or you just go home. And so me as the operator dealing with that, people just get really upset. Even if you tell them to go to the side, they don't. They just kind of stand there, yell, ask you to get the coat. Or if they leave, you now have all these leftover coats that guess who's calling the next day? All these people that left their coats there. So it was just a huge headache. I couldn't kind of manage the business well without people getting really mad. The experience was hard to control as an operator. And the idea came from, we started to ask people that when we were checking in their coats, as we were hanging their coats up on the hangers, we were asking them to write their phone numbers on the back of the piece of paper. We used to ask for initials in case they lost the ticket. We could double check the initials, but we started to ask for phone numbers because myself as a third party coming in and operating the coat check, the bar owners and the nightclub owners expected me to take all these items home because they didn't want to receive these calls the next day. So it became a side business where I would deliver their coats. If they forgot, they got too drunk, they forgot to even check the code in. I would deliver their coats to them for $20 on Sunday, or they could come pick it up for me. But I didn't want to be reactive. So collecting the phone number, I would text everyone at the end of the night, hey, you forgot your coat. Here's the instructions. Don't call me. Come by Sunday at 1 p.m. or text me your address. We'll deliver it for you. And in that journey, I realized, well, why are we writing this down on paper? Why are we giving out paper? The idea sprouted. I had an iPad. I had a spreadsheet. And I was like, why don't we just have them write their own numbers on this? We created a form, essentially. They wrote their phone number. We put in the tag number. We saved it. At the end of the night, we could just search based on their phone number. We just did a control find. What's your last four digits of your phone number? We'd find their tag numbers on the list. And I was like, this is it's a hack, but it's a better way. Yeah. Can we make this an actual system that not only gets rid of the paper ticket, but allows me to track my revenue? And that's where the idea came from. And the app is pretty simple. Put in your phone number, you get a text with your claim number. And while you're putting in the phone number, front camera takes a picture of you on the iPad. The back camera takes a picture of your coat. And we use these NFC tags. So whenever we tap them up to an NFC reader, it triggers the back camera to take a picture.
Nice. We're going to find out what's going on with Chexology and CoatChex as well at the end. But I want to get through, as we always do here, the journey. Where did the inspiration of Shark Tank come throughout this process?
Yeah, Mark Cuban went to Indiana. So he's just, everyone knows Mark Cuban at Indiana. And I'd been watching Shark Tank my senior year, and one of my professors was like, Derek, you need to bring this on the show. And I'm like, it's a B2B. I don't know if it'd be interesting. And he's like, just apply. Who knows? So that was sort of the inspiration. Was professor convinced me I like this show, and Mark Cuban's a cool guy.
That's funny. What was your process like? What was the audition process? Was that as arduous as we hear some Shark Tanks go through? Was it an audition? Did you just fill out an app? Tell us about your audition process. Yeah.
So when I saw, on Twitter, it's like, we're taking applications, click here. And it was like a, I don't know, 10-page questionnaire. It was a lot of questions. And I read through the questions and I started answering them, and I realized there's no way they're going to pick mine, right? There's no chance I get on air. So I didn't answer any of the questions. I decided instead, I don't even remember what the first question was. What's your idea? I just wrote, my name is Derek Pacque. I went to Indiana University. I made $50,000 in 6 months running a business in Kilroy's on Kirkwood. Mark Cuban went to Indiana University. He started his first business in Kilroy's on Kirkwood, and I don't think he made that much money. Second question, I forgot what the second question was. I have an idea to turn this business that I have, making $50,000. I have an idea that uses a technology that can scale it throughout the country. It'll be $1 billion company. Mark Cuban had an idea, right? That became $1 billion company. I think we should talk. Something like that. That's how I submitted it. Nothing else.
Did you get a call back in a month, in a year, in a week? What was it like?
Like a week. Associate producer. I was at a trade show. Just randomly, I see a number from Culver City, and I thought it was spam, but I answered, "Hi, okay, tell me more. What are you talking about?" Right? And so instead of answering the questions in the form, I was able to pitch her, my business, what I was doing, everything, the tech, my vision, to the producer. And I think that's what ultimately she became an influencer, my internal advocate, right? Yeah. Up to the producers. So Then I had to fill out once, she's like, okay, we want you to seriously apply. Then I had to fill out the 40-page questionnaire.
So it's not a way to bypass that.
No.
I'll tell you what, though, to find that internal champion, that's not a bad idea, though. They have questions. You have to have a great idea, though. I mean,
tactic. Yeah. If my idea was poor or I wasn't making any money, there's no chance they were going to bring me through.
So you go through the process, you work with, associate producers and get your video done and get your pitch straight and all that stuff. You finally get out to Culver City. How are you feeling? I mean, you are, as you mentioned, you're early in the process, right? With everything. You're going to have to answer that question, no. And Damon asked it. When have you sold any of this? And you had to answer no. I thought you did a really good job, by the way, of really good energy. And I think that's important. We've interviewed over 120 entrepreneurs from Shark Tank. And it's interesting. The ones that have, some people go, jump out of the gym energy and it's like, calm down. But you had that real confidence behind it. You didn't, your pitch was solid all the way through, from pitch to Q&A. You seemed very confident. Was that how you were standing before those first doors open? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, one, I was, a couple months out of college. So, the world's your oyster. You don't know what you don't know, right? It was just pure ambition at that point. And I felt very, very prepared, right? With, all the questions I thought I could ask. I felt like I had answers based on the business model, the producers wanted us to pitch. I felt like I had a good story that, for us, it was about what we're trying to get out of Shark Tank. The investment was one thing, but really it's brand recognition,
Sure.
This story being told to the world. So I liked what the producers are very smart. They did a great job working with me on catering my idea and this business to the market, the consumer marketplace, right? It's a B2B, but ultimately if I pitch to B2B, it's not as exciting as anyone could start their own CoatChex business, which is a segment. And so I felt prepared with the story, with the idea. And so that kind of gave the sort of confidence. And then the energy just came from, it's an exciting time. You're about to go meet, all these people that you see on TV. So it was my first time doing anything like that. And I think that energy came from the excitement.
Anything different than, I imagine you saw Shark Tank. Now we're in season 4 here, so you didn't see so much of it, but was there anything different from your perspective being in the studio, the experience when you first walked out? Are they closer to you, farther away, shorter, taller, anything you care to share?
Yeah. A lot more cameras. There must have been 40 cameras. I mean, it was insane. The amount, just like almost like 180, like just 40 cameras. And I was just surprised by that. As well as I got lucky, I think, the whole walk into the Shark Tank looked and felt as it was. Everything kind of looked and felt as it was. I got lucky in that I had a mic problem. So I got the jitters out because you do the walk in, you do the sound, and then I started speaking. They're like, stop. And I had this nice moment where, Mark Cuban was like, I know this guy, he's been reaching out to me. He stopped answering me. I don't know why, but now I do. Right. And then they started laughing and like, he's such a hustler. Like, I can't believe he made it on here. You're crazy, man. And that kind of like, okay, these are regular people, right? Just kind of have a convo. So that surprised me, sort of the stops and starts. Like, there's definitely a shark face. Like they're playing the shark role. I'm on a reality TV show role. And then there's the person behind the shark mask, right? The actor and then the real person. And that made me realize, because the second we're about to shoot, they all kind of get ready, they're all just like, boom, and they're back into their mode. Like and I was like, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
So kind of, that was interesting to see.
That's definitely an interesting perspective, and it's one that I didn't hear a lot. I mean, you hear some people say that I had a chance. Somebody told us a story about Robert passed them when they were checking I guess you get an opportunity to check your setup before you go in, and Robert had passed and said to this young lady, I forgot who it was, but said, hey, good luck today, or something like that. And she turned around, she goes, oh, thank you so much. It was nice. And she goes, hey, your setup's really pretty. And I think it was kids' clothing. She was like, those were really nice. And I have 2 young kids. And he started talking, and she said, that just kind of it felt so disarming because she was so nervous. But she was like, wow, these people are human. It's not like, and it was definitely comforting for her. So I can see how that would be the case. Talk to us about the patent, because you go in, you are early, but you have a patent for the technology at this stage. It wasn't patent pending. It was a patent already issued?
It was at the time. I definitely patent pending. I don't know if it was parts of it were approved at that point, but there were still some provisions going on. But it was definitely at a point where we felt confident we were getting, everything we needed for it.
Because it felt like to me at first, I got to tell you, they were harder. I've seen people get, we've all seen people get their butts kicked and thrown out of there. That wasn't your case at all, because you had a real product and something that was intriguing, and it was technology, and you had the interest of Robert and Mark. Damon did not. Barbara didn't even seem to care. Number one, Damon, and these are just my opinion, by the way, as you guys know, Damon seemed to really not want anybody to invest in it. I didn't get his.
So
his deal. And
So
again,
this is
we saw 8 to 2. Well, you had a commercial, so you had the 12-minute version, I guess. But you're in there for an hour, I imagine, give or take, probably half hour either way, right?
yeah. So this is where it becomes after you watch how they edited it and produced it versus what actually happens in there, you start to understand. Oh, the story. They're trying to bring the ups and downs in. It's about the viewer having a great time for these 15 minutes, 8 minutes without commercials. And what was interesting to me was sort of the story they told. Right, they did it in a way if because Mark Cuban was getting it, Robert was getting it, Damon was getting it. Barbara didn't get it. She just didn't understand the tech, right, and why the paper didn't work. And they were letting her know that she didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so, you're having this conversation. It's going good. There was definitely parts where, Mark Cuban's like franchise model, terrible idea too early. And I said, no, I agree. Right. But I couldn't get on this, I have to do some kind of model where anyone out there could start it. Of course we're not ready, but they don't share all that. So like they share the horrible idea. And they don't share the response, right? Because it's like, we're definitely not ready for a franchise at this point, but we like at some point that's a way to, scale to these viewers. And we'd like to possibly get there. And so it's interesting because Damon had said he'd seen this before in the market, which was just everything we're talking about beforehand. There's no way he had seen this in the market. He wasn't able to identify any place, but someone had to have a situation where this isn't, I'm out. And so that was sort of what I was interested was Damon actually after the show was like, Derek, great air, keep me posted. He actually was one going through it that was actually very interesting and interested in it. So it was weird to me why at that point he was just like, oh, I've seen this before, I'm out. But so it's interesting, how they cut it versus the actual relationships you're building with them. Totally different, I felt, than how it was viewed on the air.
So did you respond to, because that was a question I had, was Damon says, unfortunately, and they do find ways to get out. I mean, there's some people just say, I have other businesses that are around this, and you look in their portfolio and it's like, what? So I don't think it, works for me. Usually Lori would say, this isn't, I try to have things that are, already well developed and stuff. And this isn't, she wasn't there obviously, but, Damon did say that. And when they showed your face, and we've have definitely many examples of the response doesn't actually match the question. Correct. And stuff. But your response, even to that, if it was that response, was like, I want to ask you, and I've got to say that you must have asked him, where have you seen it? Right?
First question.
Yeah.
Where and what is it called? And I've never seen it, heard of it, and no one else I know has ever seen or heard of it. And he goes, no, it's in the nightclubs in Miami. I like he just kind of brushed it off, right? And they're all talking, so it's like they kind of move on. You just kind of have to just get on with it, and that's the funniest thing that you mentioned, other people talking about the facial reactions, because that was one thing going into the show when I joined like the Facebook groups with everyone who's been on the air. They were all like, just keep your face, right? You show them a moment of nervousness, scared, that is going to be highlighted somewhere within the episode. So that was something I was actually practicing beforehand, was like, guys, challenge me. Let me know if, try to rock me. And there's no question, looking back on it, they're totally grabbing those expressions and highlighting them.
We have a very educated listening and viewing audience, Derek. We're very familiar with the very exclusive Facebook Shark Tank group. We've had many of those. Actually, I think Shelly Eiler from No Show Towel was the one that created it back in season 3. And she said, I don't have anything to do with it anymore. Like, I'm not even part of it, but it's carried on this. And I love the fact, and I know we're getting off topic, but I love the fact, all I hear from that is, like you just said, great tips, but also resources, right? I was talking to Heather from Dollop Gourmet, who works with Tracy at Wicked Cupcakes, and they were talking about international distribution. And I mean, like, you have all of these great minds and entrepreneurial spirits. Your minds will kind of, get together when necessary, right? It's a great resource, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, you share this commonality, right? No one goes through it. And so to have people that relate and like, especially once you come out of the show, you're like, whoa, what just happened? They're like, no, this happens to all of us. It's a comfort. So it was a cool group. Cool. It's been a cool gift to stick around and follow. Very, very similar. Every time someone comes in, they're like, and you're like, no, you're cool. You're okay. Don't worry. That was everyone.
That's funny. One of the best lines, and I know it didn't mean this way, but it was pretty funny on there, is when Kevin asked you why you didn't go and kind of do proof of concept with a steakhouse or something like that. Why didn't you check this out? And your answer was because it's too warm in Indianapolis. I just thought that, I mean, I get that was the real, I mean, that's what it is. Nobody's checking coats. It's, whatever. It's probably either June or September is when they film, right? So and they went laugh like it was, some kind of sophomoric response by you or you know what I mean? It was funny in its context. But then I thought about it later and I'm like, wait, that wasn't that funny. It was just the fact he's in Indianapolis and it's in June. Did that take any more legs or was that it? Was like that one?
Well, yeah. And going back to, you asked about the patent, right? And this was sort of that point in the show where they were like, why aren't you testing this? Why aren't you validating? And, I told them the story. I'm like, it's a seasonal CoatChex business. And it's something I know. I don't want to be a seasonal business forever. And that's when I brought up, we created this patent, but I recognized, when I was trying to build this, I'm like, okay, well, do they have something similar for valet or luggage storage, dry clean? And no one had really solved this text-based giving the paper out. And I said, I patented this, the process. It doesn't matter what you're checking in or out, whether you're storing something or lending something, you write it. Like if you rent a car versus valet a car, think about the ticket, right? When you valet a car, they write down limited information because they don't want to take liability. But when you rent a car, they do a lot, right? They get your credit card, everything like that, because they're the business. They have control. And I realized, wow, this process is broken. Business has all power. Customers have no power. Creates all these claims, all these problems, the stigma, essentially. Like I don't trust this operation. You see people taking their own pictures of their cars before they check in their cars. It's crazy. Or when they rent one, they take pictures so that in case there's a claim. And so when I started to bring up the patent, I said, the CoatChex is like the simplest ticket. It's a number that goes on the tag. It's a number that goes on, a tag that goes on the coat, matching tag number that goes to you. Luggage stored, they collect your name. Valet, they collect, it's a Honda, it's red, it's numbers. And I said, we want to build something that's more universal. Yes, CoatChex, we're going to continue to develop it when it's the right season. And so that's when I was like, but it's the middle of summer. I'm not, it's my time is not best spent trying to find people CoatChecking in summer. It's trying to find something else I can be doing and, solving a problem in those off-seasonal months. And that's, they started to laugh. But I think that's when that turning point came to like, oh, this is bigger than CoatChecking. And that's when Robert, right, I answered that and he's like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. I see what stage you're in. And that's when Mark as well was like, okay, I see the market size of everything that you check, you store and you lend out, right? That's a big market of where people exchange goods and, for a period of time and expect it back in the same conditions. So that kind of validated the market opportunity, look, I know this process. I know it for one of the hardest ones, right? I would say CoatChecking is probably the place where you deal with the most claims, the most issues. Yeah. And I said, these other ones are just slower. They collect more information, but they're not, the speed isn't the problem. So if we could do it for CoatChecking, we'll just continue and build more features to do it and solve the pain points in the other ones.
Makes sense. I mean, I thought that the two technology guys stayed in because I think it was a technology play. I mean, that's just what it was. I mean, and the addressable market is definitely widening as you started listing those verticals. And you could see the wheels turning in both Mark and Robert, if that was their correct expressions. But so that's the interesting piece. I want to get to that because that was, we head to commercial right there with, I think Robert made an offer. I think it was first. Didn't he make an offer first? No. What happened is, I don't know what order it happens. Why don't you tell us the way it goes? Because I think if you remember,
so Mark and Robert, it came down to valuation, right? So they're like, what are you valuing this at? And, a big part that they kept off air was the fact I was making a lot of money with my services, right? Yeah. So the technology I wasn't selling yet to other people, but I was using the technology in my own operations and to scale my services. So, using it as a competitive advantage to say, oh, you can check, this way, but we can solve all these problems. We have this tech. Let me take your service contract and work out a deal. So, they wanted to invest in the tech, but I had capital and profit I was making in the service, and I wasn't willing to come down to a point of like, I don't have a revenue stream yet.
It's just it was so interesting that you held your own, and we'll get to that in a second. I mean, everybody, you're known as the guy that turned down Mark Cuban, right? I mean, that's just a fact. But you mentioned it. You're just out of college. You're not, it's not you now. But to hold, everybody in the tank was saying to you at the end, don't make them. Barbara even spoke up. She's like, think about it before you make a decision here. Kevin is pleading to you. Don't walk away. You're going to regret this. I love that you stand on your own. And I did come back to me because I've watched this thing 1,000 times. You offer 15% to Robert. Robert says, make me a deal that's more, and you say 1.5 and effectively 15%. And he was, that kind of got around there. Then Mark comes out and says 200 for 33%. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when you took off to talk to your professor, if that's the way it happened in the tank. And the phone call we hear is, it seems a little rich for me, kind of thing. I don't know how you did it, man. I got to be honest with you. I'm thinking myself back then, and Mark Cuban is a billionaire that's got more connections than anybody. And you're sitting there going, 200 for 20% is what you say. And he goes with a finger. He has to be dramatic. He says, no. And you just said, hey, thanks for your time. And I was like, man, mad respect for you for doing that. Tell us about how you're feeling during that time.
Yeah. So fortunately, before I went on the air, I prospected this around. I pitched it around the market. I wanted to really understand what value I can get. I went to business school. I majored in entrepreneurship and management. So I wasn't, I took finance classes. I wrote business plans. I knew, I took venture capital classes, and I was just very passionate about it. So I understood the economics to building the tech, the costs you're going to need to build a tech, equity ownership, dilution. I knew all that going in, and then I shopped it around. So I knew that he's not the only billionaire out there investing in technology. So I had offers sort of, in the 1.5 million range, right? And then you look at what's behind the cash. What can these people do to help scale the business? And with Mark, if he was able to provide enough details at the time, right? Like, this is what I can do. Here's how I can help. Here's the plan. It's something where, I might have considered it, but in that moment with what I knew, it was sort of like, I can get this money elsewhere. Other people can provide me with the relationships, the networking, the resources. I really would have loved to work with Mark because he is an idol of mine, but it came down to understanding my value in the company as far as my equity and understanding the valuation of the tech that I was getting out there. And so that made it easier not to have to go down to a 33%. It kind of gave me a cap where Mark definitely should get a discount because he's worth more than the cash. But what is that discount? And I think, for me, my word is my word. If I'm shaking, I'm shaking. I'm not going to back out. I just didn't have enough information of what he could provide for that extra incentive, the difference between that 15, 20 and 33%. And that's what it came down to.
And you're 100% right? There's other ways to get the capital. There's no doubt about it. But I think the difference is the Shark Tank experience is not just the day you air. It's also having that logo, that stamp of approval. I've talked to some entrepreneurs that have no reference. They don't use Shark Tank reference at all. They don't talk about being on the show. They don't have anything to do with it. And I asked some of them why, and they said, hey, you know what? It happened a long time ago, and I don't need to still talk about it. I don't want to be the next as seen on TV kind of thing. And when they said the as seen on TV, I thought, and I have no right to stick up for Shark Tank. I mean, it means, I don't want to say it means nothing to me, but I don't have any stake in the game. But I felt defensive towards it because I talked to over 120 entrepreneurs that have gone through the ringer. The viability of your business has been through the ringer. Behind those producers are finance people and lawyers, and they're all looking at your stuff. Pre-tank, post-tank, if you get a deal, they're doing due diligence, all of that stuff. And I think there does come some validity if I'm a buyer or whatever, not just to the consumer out there. Take that a step further is they say it often in the tank that no one doesn't take my calls. There might be a lot of billionaires out there that people may not take their calls. And again, and there may be, but I'm just saying that I felt, again, I'm not questioning your decision of doing it. I thought, quite frankly, you knew what you were doing when you walked out of there. But man, just to be able to do that is, just to be able to say, no, thank you.
You bring up some great points, right? There's the intangibles you have to consider in the decision, right? And so the one, when you say validation, the stamp, to us, it was getting an offer stamps this, right? The fact that he was willing to give cash, right, stamps it. Rejecting the offer, not coming to a deal. So for us, it'd be the worst if no one liked the idea and we left there with no offers. The fact that a guy like Mark Cuban saw it, was willing to make an offer, and even willing to make what everyone else thought was a higher offer than they should, is validation. For us, right, we actually, a play we saw, no one had turned down Mark Cuban to that date, right? No one had said no. That, our hope was to get an offer from Mark Cuban, if not Mark, one of the tech guys, or possibly Damon for his entertainment and industry, background. But we saw this as the person that says no to Mark Cuban, who doesn't turn a deal, actually gets a lot more. The story continues, right? And for us, our main primary objective of going in there was sharing the story of this problem. Losing claim tickets is awful, and we're the ones solving it. And I looked at Mark. He was someone I was emailing before. He responds. He's someone where when the time is right, if the time is right and it lines up, I have no issue. I have no problem going back to him and saying, hey, is this a good time? Let's try it now. So for me, I didn't see it, at least in the tank, talking to Mark. And we had talked a lot like timing, right? It's like, I don't know if I want the cash right now at this valuation. And you hear me say it to him, I'm like, let me come back to you when I do. And the response I got was like, yeah, okay. It wasn't like, no, I'm never going to talk to you again. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And yeah, you're early, but here's money on the table at this point for where you are. And, I have for what, he gave and what he thought he was going to do. It was a very nice offer. Like, it was a very respectable thing to do. It validated a lot. So for me, it was, yeah. And it's tough when you're in the tank, right? Because it's so quick, so fast. And I was so young. But taking a step back, calling, someone that one of my mentors that I respected, he was like, okay, relax, calm down, think bigger picture. And it's one of those things, I live by no regrets, but it's one of those things we'll never know, right? Which one was the better, which one would have been better. And at this point, I'm just happy that we've gotten to where we are today, and we're still, kicking and thriving and doing really well. So ultimately, the decision didn't affect me going under and failing. So.
Got it. Before we hear what's going on with CoatChex and Chexology, I want to talk about your Shark Tank experience. So you walk out of the tank, you're not airing yet. You go back and do your business, and all of a sudden you find out, and we're very conscious, Derek, of every interaction with every producer ends with, hey, you did a great job, but you still might not get on the air. We understand what their pitch to you is, but you do find out you're going to get on the air, and just want to hear about that experience. So I can imagine that you were flooded with not only, potential leads and opportunities, and we're not doing Scrub Daddy here, folks. So he's not, getting orders to the next day, but definitely maybe inquiries about franchising, maybe investors. Tell us about the Shark Tank experience for you.
Yeah. So once we heard we were getting on air, it was all about prepping. What are the things we need to make sure we're ready for based on what's about to happen? And we funneled it into three things: leads, right? Figure out a way that tons of leads could come in. We got to vet them and focus on the top priority ones and be nice and have a good path for everybody else. Press, right? How do we continue this story? Because that was our play. We said no to Mark Cuban. We knew people would be like, are you crazy? Why? Right. And we wanted that covered. So, we were like, we want to be an Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes, Business Insider, Bloomberg, let's set this up. And so we invested time and energy into making sure we could expand our audience from 8 million from Shark Tank to about 25, 30 million through these other channels. And then the last thing was fielding investors and making the next move. So you're absolutely right. That was just all heads down focus. Get ready for those three things.
How did it materialize? Did it come out the way you hoped in those three categories?
I would say it was much harder than I thought. We got 6,000 leads, something insane within 2 days. That process was much harder and took a lot more time than expected. We were not prepared for the amount of leads, and really, we were young. We didn't ask the right question. We didn't think through how to prospect, the right way. So that we could have done a lot better. I think from the press side, we really executed that one well. That one absolutely went well. And then the investor side, we realized we need to move to New York. It was sort of that moment based on where the leads were coming from, the actual good ones. I was like, New York is the CoatChex capital of the world. We need to move here. This is where we can expand our business. This is where the investments are. The investors here get it. They deal with the problems. And so that was the move. I mean, we moved to New York within, I think, 2 months after that aired. And I'm glad, because I don't know if we would have pivoted that quickly to chase the demand and the, both business opportunity and investors. So ultimately we ended up raising from New York investors, and we're able to get it to that next level.
So tell us what's happening with CoatChex and Chexology. What's going on today?
Yeah. So CoatChex is a great name for coat checking, but it's now used for way more applications than coat checking. So luggage storage, rentals, we do things from silent disco, headphones, they use our system to lend things out, to Mophis at major events like US Open.
Oh, that's cool.
So we realized Chexology, we re-encompassed the company. CoatChex was the app for coat checking. We came up with Chexology so we could service and market all these different use cases. And now, you could find CoatChex, for example. It's in the Museum of Modern Art. It's in House of Blues. It's in the Barclays Center. It's in Australia and London and the biggest casinos and convention centers around the country. So CoatChex is scaling. COVID has presented a little bit of a hiccup. Like, we got to get through this to continue scaling that one. But we've identified recently luggage storage in hotels, and with the adoption of contactless, paper now is just a no-no, especially in these high-end services. So we've used COVID and the fact that people are adopting to contactless ways to pay, contactless processes to really enter the hospitality space, specifically hotels. Luggage storage was sort of always on our mind, but we never saw the same problems as we did with coat checking and let's say valet. But this presented a big opportunity for us to go in, and that's sort of where we're focused now is hotels, because it has the opposite seasonality of CoatChex, and that's sort of been our goal: is how do we balance coat checking seasonality with other businesses, and hotels has summer seasonal business, so heavy focus there.
Really, really interesting. That's really cool how everything's evolved. Really appreciate your time today. It was awesome to hear the journey. It's awesome to hear that things are going well with the business. And like I said, I really appreciate you being here today.
And thanks for having me, Nick. It's a good conversation.
We'll be back with more What Would You Ask podcast in a second.